And we're live. Welcome, everybody, here to the Lakers Lowdown Podcast. I'm Anthony Irwin, Lakers insider for Lakers Daily. Today on the show, we are going to be talking about. Your guess is as good as mine. I'm kidding. We're going to be talking about the latest on the Lakers head coaching search. We're going to figure out the direction that might be going in, by using some reports, some early reports on it, and some of the stuff that I've been hearing. Kind of flew under the radar recently, but Trae Young left Klutch Sports for CAA. Seeing as the Lakers and Klutch typically, kind of work hand in hand on some of these things. Obviously, completely above water. But seeing as the Lakers tend to be kind of influenced to a certain extent by Klutch Sports and by LeBron James, that's worth noting. And then seeing as this is a kind of a more kind of wandering episode of the Lowdown, I'm going to take your guys' questions. I already got a couple from Twitter. I will take a look at the iTunes mailbag to see if we have any new ones there. And if you guys are watching live here on YouTube, hit me up. Let me know if you have any questions there, and I'll get to those as quickly as I can. A ton of stuff still, despite the offseason, still kind of trudging along here to talk about. So let's go ahead and dive on in. All right. So Dan Wojcicki of the LA Times put together a really good thing, or a nice little kind of summary for the LA Times newsletter, which I hope you guys are subscribed to, in which he kind of talked about some of the things that he's hearing early on with the Lakers head coaching search. Essentially, the Lakers, it seems likely that they will prioritize experience, given how things went with Darvin Ham. It was always weird to me that the Lakers would not value experience when they hired Darvin Ham, seeing as they won a championship with an experienced head coach. Well, what do I know? But according to him, the Lakers are valuing that experience. So he mentions Kenny Atkinson, who has been a head coach before and has worked under Steve Kerr with the Golden State Warriors for the last couple of years there, as a name worth kind of keeping an eye on. Also mentioned, obviously, Tyronn Lue, who league sources say almost nobody in the league thinks that Lue is going to be leaving the Clippers this offseason. Now, look, we saw this. Gosh, what was the example? Spencer Dinwiddie, right? When the Lakers signed Spencer Dinwiddie, the Lakers people that I was talking to felt pretty good that they were going to be able to get Spencer Dinwiddie. And the league people that I talked to thought that Dinwiddie was going to be going to Dallas. And obviously, we now know that Dinwiddie chose the Lakers over the Dallas Mavericks. And I thought had a fairly good stint, I would say average compared to most other buyout players. And again, the people that I talk to around the league are indicating that Lue will probably stick around with the Clippers, right? Almost nobody looks at the Clippers and says the problem there is coaching. The problem there is a pair of stars who just haven't been max players while they've been paid like max players. So that's kind of the starting point there. I do think that the Lakers are going to take their time in hiring a head coach and try to give the Clippers and Lue as much time to come to some kind of an agreement, whether that is to extend their relationship or to have it come to an end. The Lakers, I don't think, will make any kind of a decision until we get clarity on Tyronn Lue. I think that's a smart way to go about it. That said, league sources again say that Ty more likely than not will remain with the Clippers. And I've sensed similar vibes off of the Lakers. I was told essentially that if Lue was available, he'd be the head coach already. Like he's the Lakers, kind of top choice. Unfortunately, he's not available, and they are certainly going to give time to the situation to see if he becomes available. And I think he would be pretty easily their quick and top choice if he became available. It just doesn't seem all that likely, and the Lakers don't necessarily feel like it's all that likely that Lou will become available. In part, by the way, as I just talked with my buddy Robert the other day, in part, I think because the Clippers know that the Lakers would like Tyronn Lue to become available, So, yeah, there's a lot going on there, and we will see how all of that plays out. But as it stands right now, I would not expect a decision to be made certainly by the end of the playoffs. I don't think the Lakers are in that kind of a hurry to make a decision on a head coach before then. Obviously, you would like it to get figured out sooner rather than later because you have, draft prep to start, and you have an off season, that you would like a head coach in place to get a sense for what kind of team they would like to coach. So I don't think it'll take months to figure this out, but I do think that the Lakers are going to be as thorough as they can, which is smart, with the intent of being thorough and also to, keep Lou as a potential option just in case he and the Clippers aren't able to come to terms, which, again, would surprise most of the people that I talk to around the league, but dumber things have happened, right? Like, say, the Lakers not coming to terms with Tyronn Lue, however many years ago. The other subject that I wanted to hit on here before we get to questions, and I'm going to leave a ton of room here. I haven't been able to answer too many questions recently, so fire away with those questions. We have about 300 people here watching. If you have a question on Twitter, hit me up there. Those come through the comment section as well. If you have a question on YouTube, please do fire away there as well. If you are watching on YouTube or Twitter, please hit the subscribe button. Either youtube.com/@Lakers Lounge is where you can find us there, or you could just follow me on Twitter @AnthonyIrwinLA, which you can see right there. All right. So another story that I thought kind of flew under the radar here was Trae Young reportedly leaving Klutch, heading into this upcoming offseason. Obviously interesting anytime a player changes agency, because that does tend to have a ripple effect across the rest of their career, but also the rest of the rest of the NBA in some cases. And in this one, with it being Klutch Sports in particular, an agency that we know has a working relationship with the Lakers that is, pretty similar to, say, CAA's relationship with the Knicks. The Trae leaving Klutch would lead one to believe it doesn't feel like a large leap, that the chances of him being a Laker might dip just a little bit. How much? Don't know. But certainly, that's where my brain went, was, oh, okay. I guess that is that makes that whole concern of mine, based, if you guys tuned into yesterday's show, it makes that concern of mine a little lessened, because I don't particularly want Trae Young on the Lakers. Never really been the biggest fan of his game. His reputation around the league isn't particularly great either. And the Lakers would have to move heaven and earth to get a tiny little point guard when the rest of NBA basketball would indicate that those tiny little point guards are becoming less and less valuable. I just finished watching the Knicks play the Pacers, and that game was just insanely physical, up and down the court, hand checking all over the place. It looks like Adam Silver wants a return to a more physical game. And, I don't know how Trae Young, we know how Trae Young would handle that. He was one of the players who completely short-circuited when the league stopped allowing so much grifting and twerking for fouls. He short-circuited and was one of the players who complained to the league about, hey, what's going on here? Why aren't you calling that anymore? And, there are defensive concerns with him. He has never learned to work off of the ball, which is kind of weird considering how great a shooter he is. And seeing as you're going to be playing with LeBron James for at least a couple years of your tenure here, you need to get somebody who can operate off of the ball. And again, the Lakers would probably have to trade. Like, I can maybe throw together a trade offer, just to give you guys a sense of what the math at least would look like. I'll do that while I kind of filibuster. But the Lakers would have to move. Like, we knew that the Lakers weren't thrilled about the price for DeJounte Murray. There's nothing that would indicate that Trae Young would be cheaper than DeJounte Murray. But anyway, Trae Young makes $43 million, right? You can already basically, if the Lakers trade for Trae Young, they're moving all three of their picks for Trae Young. You could just take that to the bank. That is already something you could anticipate. Obviously, the Lakers aren't going to be trading LeBron James or Anthony Davis for him. And their next highest salary is D'Angelo Russell if he opts into his contract this year, which I'm told he probably isn't going to do. So D'Lo, unless you're like signing and trading him for Trae Young, I don't, that gets kind of tricky there. But then your next biggest salary is Rui Hachimura. He makes $17 million. So you send him to Atlanta. Your next one after that is Austin Reeves. They would probably ask for Austin. So right now you've just traded 2 of your 5 starters for Trae Young. You're getting a starter back, to be clear. But now your backcourt going into next year, if you re-sign D'Angelo Russell, is Trae Young and D'Angelo Russell. You're going to walk into the same problems that you had with Austin Reeves and D'Angelo Russell. And that isn't enough money that you're sending out there. So you'd probably have to move, Jared Vanderbilt as well. And let's see if those 3 players, Reeves, Vanderbilt, and Hachimura, and you're probably going to have to move Jalen Hood-Schifino too. So I'll just throw him there as well. So those 4 players now for Trae Young plus all of your draft picks, that works. And I'll go ahead and throw this up on the screen so that you could see what it looks like. And this is not a trade that I'm particularly interested in. Again, did all of this, while I've been on the air. Probably should have done it like while, maybe before the show so that I wouldn't have had to do it on the air. But you guys can now see it. The screenshot is uploading, and there it is. So that's what you're looking at, plus the draft picks, probably a couple pick swaps as well, because the Hawks are going to be asking for everything that teams don't have tied down. And for some of the assets that teams do have tied down, the Hawks are going to ask if they have a knife handy to see if you can cut through some of the line that you've tied your assets down with. And I don't know, like I'm just going to, quickly scroll through the comments here. To see how interested the comment section is, and I'm not over the moon over it. And I see like, all right, so Average Dad is saying keep Vando and trade Gabe. I don't know if the Hawks would be interested in Gabe for this trade. They're going to want all of the Lakers' best stuff, and Gabe is not any of the Lakers' best stuff. So I'll leave it up to you guys for now. You guys can keep letting me know in the comments and on Twitter and emails and all that stuff if you want. But that Trae Young deal, man, like that's a lot to give up for somebody who, and after you do that, you're going to have to rely heavily on your veteran minimum signings to work out. I think you'll still have one exception to be able to use there. So you do get, that asset to bring in an extra player. And you won't have any draft picks to build your first round draft picks, that is. To hope to, get some cheap, manageable contracts that way. I just, so when I heard that Trae Young left Klutch, I was like, oh, okay. All right. Sure hopes this means that the Lakers aren't as interested. And he was kind of upset that the Lakers weren't as interested as they might be going into the offseason. And look, like this is something that I'm working on as well for a write-up for Lakers Daily. But I have gotten the sense in some of the conversations that I've had with people close to the Lakers that the Lakers aren't as like gung ho and desperate to add a third star as we may have believed going into the offseason, which was music to my ears. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and go from that little spiel to your guys' questions and your guys' comments, because I'm sure you guys have a lot of them going into the off season. And it's always so funny because obviously I would prefer to be covering the Lakers in a playoff series right now, right? That kind of goes without saying that I would prefer to, be previewing their second round matchup. I would prefer to be looking ahead to the Western Conference Finals and to everything that the Lakers could potentially pull off against whoever it is that they would be playing. And you know, unfortunately, we aren't there yet. However, this time of year is the time when like everybody has their most hope and the most belief that even though this last season was as disappointing as it was, maybe a couple decisions go the right way here and there. Maybe like Gabe Vincent is somebody I'm sure a lot of people are hoping can just do anything for the Lakers next year, and that would already make the Lakers better than they were a season ago if you keep everything else equal. And so like there's a lot that you can kind of point to and hope for, and this is the best time of season to essentially do that. But enough of that. Let's go into the first question here I have from the iTunes mailbag, which again, for those of you who wonder, the best way to get your comments or questions onto the show is by leaving a 5-star review on iTunes. That helps the show grow. It's free. It's relatively easy. But this one comes from JP22/1. Resign Braun, trade D'Lo, Rui, and Gabe for DeJounte and Mikal Bridges. Get Ty Lue and Rondo on the staff. Build out the rest of the roster with guys 6'5" and above. Get another center or two. Fire the medical staff and get a new one. Thoughts? Also put Jokic in more pickle roles. Yeah, I'm anything to do to make Jokic's life difficult. There's a fly in my studio. Fantastic. Of the things that are listed there, re-sign Braun, that seems likely. I'm told that the Lakers have plenty of confidence going into the offseason that they'll be able to work out a deal with LeBron James. Trade D'Lo, Rui, and Gabe for DeJounte Murray and Mikal Bridges. That feels unlikely. I don't think the Lakers have enough assets for both of those players. And also trading D'Lo is kind of difficult because it would require him opting into his contract, which again seems unlikely. And then you got to hope that maybe you can find a sign and trade partner for D'Lo, but that would involve them being happy with the new contract that he signs to, him being happy with the new contract that he signs to, and also that team being willing to give up whatever it is that you're asking for D'Lo and whatever additional assets that you're throwing in there with him. So, D'Lo, this is part of why I said I was pretty frustrated with the Lakers for not finding a trade partner for D'Lo going into the back at the deadline, because now you're kind of stuck. You can't let him walk for nothing. Signing and trading him, they tried to do that last summer and weren't able to do it. And once you sign him to a new deal, you have to wait for a few months into the next season to be able to find a deal for him all over again. And you're just right back on that treadmill that you were on last year. But you know what? It's behind you, I guess, at this point. And we'll see how it works out for the Lakers this year. Get Ty Lue and Rondo on the staff. Again, Lue would be the Lakers' choice if he was available. That would be done already. And then Rondo, I don't think is going to happen. You can just Google Rondo off-court stuff and see why. Build out the rest of the roster with guys 6'5" and above. Totally agree on that front. I like if you go into the year, as you will likely go into the year with probably D'Lo, probably Austin, maybe also Gabe. and you sign another point guard, we're gonna have some problems. Like, I would not handle that particularly well. That if you go into the year with all three of those guys for somehow for some reason, and bring in more backcourt talent, that it's a waste of resources. It's a poor use of resources. Get another center or two. I mean, you're bringing back Wood. He opted into his contract. You will probably have to you do need to upgrade your backup center. It needs to be better than it has been the last few years, where we've had Damian Jones, my large adult son. They brought him back, and that was a disaster. Jackson Hayes was pretty good, but I think you still need somebody better than him. As AD goes into year 13, you've had Christian Wood, right, who was so unspectacular that he opted into a veteran minimum player option this heading into the summer. So like the options there, I would say the best backup big that I was like actually excited to watch play behind Anthony Davis and sometimes with Anthony Davis was Marc Gasol, and that was like a few years ago. So the Lakers need to do better than they have done with those spots over the last few years. Fire the medical staff and get a new one. I've been waiting for that announcement. Given the amount of injuries and how long it takes for the Lakers to recover from their injuries, we haven't gotten any update on that. That I don't know when that would actually take place. I think if it would have taken place, it would have happened already. But that remains to be. I'll ask it. I'll look into that one and see if that's something that the Lakers are considering doing. They don't tend to spend a ton of money on their medical staff. It's really frustrating, but that is kind of how they operate. And I think, put Jokic in more pickle rolls. Absolutely. All right. My next, let's go ahead and play this thing. My next question here, I asked for some questions from Twitter and got this from George Santiago. How do you enforce a culture of making every game count while you have LeBron load managing the whole regular season? I think since the first Russ season, the Lakers had that just get to the playoffs mindset, regardless of seeding. Yeah, I mean, that's something that, culture is, usually set from the top down, right? And, that includes your stars. And if your stars go into every year, and by the way, LeBron has to, at this stage of his career, go into every season with the playoffs and staying healthy for the playoffs as his top and frankly only priority. So what you need to do as the head coach and as the organization is make it known to everybody else you exist to make LeBron's life easier so that he can focus on the playoffs and help get us to the playoffs. And now, like, that doesn't mean that LeBron isn't going to play in key games in the regular season. I think so. Now that the league has implemented that 65 game rule, that's going to be a goal of LeBron's year in, year out. And same goes for Anthony Davis. So you get a little help there, but yeah, I think, one thing that kind of drove me crazy with Darvin was he wouldn't hold anybody accountable. Like, I never saw him rip anybody. And, that's something that whoever the Lakers hire for their next head coach, whether it comes from the head coach or it comes from the, a more experienced assistant coach on the staff who maybe used to be a really good player, like Chauncey Billups, right? There's some scuttlebutt around the league that he might be let go by Portland if he becomes available and he can kind of operate in that Jason Kidd role for the Lakers. Then, in more ways than one, unfortunately, but like, if he can kind of step in and offer that voice in the locker room that holds LeBron and Anthony Davis accountable, that'd be great. I actually think one thing the Lakers might look into doing is bringing Jared Dudley onto the staff. We know that LeBron, he was one of, like, he had a tweet ready for Jared Dudley's departure, but didn't have a tweet ready for Alex Caruso's departure. That really kind of stuck out to me. But I think that the Lakers just kind of miss a former player, and ideally a really, really good former player, like Hall of Fame level good former player, to step in there, know how these players operate, know how to like translate. Like if they hire a Bud type head coach, or if they hire Mike Nori, or if they hire any of these other, like high ranking assistant coaches, David Adelman, who are more X's and O's focused and um, haven't had the same like kind of playing experience as the guys that they are going to be coaching. It really, I think, helps to have a former player on your staff to be able to translate some of those things. That you do have a culture difference there. You have a background difference there between your head coach and your players, and certainly also with your stars and Anthony Davis and LeBron James. You do need a again, for lack of a better word, a translator there to help get that message across and help hammer whatever message you need to get across home with the guys that need to hear whatever it is that you're selling. All right, I'm going to go into we have two starred comments here. So Jason Kelly sent one, which means I get to do this thing. All right, Jason Kelly writes, Caruso and Russ decisions ended the LeBron and AD window. Unless Bron can turn back the clock 4 years and AD can lose 30 pounds and run the floor, it's over. Well, as I know it, I don't believe a time machine exists. So option one there is not applicable, not possible. AD losing 30 pounds, like that's an arbitrary number. It's just part of the comment. So I'm not going to take that number specifically seriously. But I do think like the Lakers and Davis are going to have to work together because he has missed some of that explosiveness basically since they moved him to center full time. And part of the reason there, and again, like as I said at the time, part of the reason there is, and you talk to people who are close to Davis, they will say that he gained that additional weight in order to withstand the physicality that you incur playing center on a nightly basis. And then other people that you kind of talked to wondered aloud if AD got a little too comfortable after winning a championship back in that 2019-2020 season. So, regardless of how you got here, I do think it would serve Davis to gain or to lose a little of that weight, or just talk to the Lakers and say, all right, I will still play predominantly center. I think I think he's played like at least 90% of his minutes at center over maybe even 99 or 100% of his minutes at center over the last couple of years. Maybe you bring that percentage down a little bit depending on the center that you bring in, right? If you do trade all of your stuff for Lauri Markkanen, if you are able to go out and get like a Kelly Olynyk or something like that, well, I'm not even sure is trade eligible because he just signed an extension. Well, I'll check back at Jack. I'll check back in to see if that is even possible. But what the point that Jason is making here, I think, is a good one. In that, however they arrive there, AD needs to look more explosive than he has looked the last couple of years since they started playing him at center full time. I still think because of his shooting woes, he needs to be seen as a center. But what made him special back when he was playing more four was he was too physical for small ball centers and small fours, but he was also too quick for your big lumbering centers, right? And with the way that he kind of plays now and the way that he carries his weight now, he is almost the inverse of that. where he's still too physical for bigs, for like, small ball centers. That's why you see him really succeed against really small lineups out there. But he's not able to take advantage of the Jokic's of the world and the Arvydas Sabonis's of the world and all of those big physical centers who are beating the crap out of him on one end. Normally, his counter on the other is to just dribble around them and get them into foul trouble by taking advantage of angles and stuff like that. But now that he's a little less explosive, he isn't as able to do that. And I think that has really affected the impact that he can have against those types of bigs. So, however they get there, I do think that Jason makes a good point here in in typical commenter way, which I was once I started all of this being a commenter too. So like not judging at all, but that is a great point and something that I've been hoping for dating back to like last year. Can we get Anthony Davis looking more explosive? I thought we saw a little bit of it. I thought he looked a lot more explosive this year than he did last. Part of that, I think, is the health thing. And I think, getting further away from some of the injuries that held him back. It's nice that he's going into this offseason again healthy and will able to focus on, improving rather than recovering. And I think that sets him up pretty well going into a really important season for AD, right? It's hard to expect LeBron and AD was the better player, I think, on the whole. But in big moments, the Lakers still were a LeBron team. And I think LeBron and the Lakers would like to see the Lakers be more of an Anthony Davis team in some of them, not all of them. Otherwise, there's no point in LeBron. But some of those minutes, some of those key moments, they want to be more of an Anthony Davis team, and that will, that requires AD to be a little bit better than he was this year. All right, the next comment here, this one from Brandon Omeng, is a lineup of AC, KCP, Kuzbron, and AD would be good. Yeah, I agree. I think that won a championship. Again, like this is what I talked about in I guess it was this morning's episode. It dropped this morning. But how frustrating it is that the Lakers like figured out the formula. They figured out like the combination of players that basically every title team since has looked like, right? The Bucks looked like this with Giannis being this super wing. You had Brook Lopez defending the rim like crazy. And then you had enough creativity and shooting around them and physicality on the perimeter to really kind of give teams problems. The team that won the championship after them, was it Denver? I think it was Denver. But again, like with them, you have, great wing defense from Aaron Gordon. You have Nikola Jokic. Now he operates differently than Brook Lopez and even Anthony Davis, obviously. But when he is playing his best defense, he's not like your typical rim defender, but he's a good positional defender when he isn't being challenged. And when they won a championship, I think that's what that kind of looked like. And then you have Jamal Murray, a dogged competitor, play way better last year than he did this year. And KCP obviously is the common denominator between the Lakers that won a championship and the Nuggets that won the championship. And then you have Kuz and MPJ being, I would say, rough equivalents of each other. And like that's been the formula. And you look at the teams that are competing for it this year. And for my money, I think Minnesota has the best chance at winning a championship this year. It looks a lot like that, right? You have Gobert being the super rim defender. You have Anthony Edwards as your super wing. You have Mike Conley as your steady, small things point guard. And then you have insane wing defense around those guys. And there's your formula. And the Lakers figured out the formula and immediately ran away from said formula. And it's like kept me awake, like, taking years off of my life ever since. I'm not well in the head because they ditched that formula. BG the Kid writes, Nori should be the guy, but we'll hire Redick. I don't think that's necessarily true. It's not to say that, like, I don't think the Lakers have a strong preference either way between those two players right now, or between those two coaches. The Nori hire, unfortunately, like, I'm scarred by the Luke Walton experience. But remember, Luke was the most popular candidate on the market at the time. He was he had, the closest thing to head coaching experience because of Steve Kerr's back surgery as you could with with a first time head coach. He was this, like, darling with players and teammates in the media as well. Like, when they hired Luke Walton, I was very excited, and unfortunately found out very quickly that he was not the reason those teams were special. But here we are, and I think Mike Nori, and I think he has. There are more people willing to identify what Nori does well and does for the Wolves than were able and willing to identify those things for Luke Walton back when the Lakers hired Walton. But Nori, like, again, he's essentially operating as a pseudo head coach right now because of Chris Finch's injury, and he is their lead assistant, and is a very popular candidate. So I could see why there's interest there. I don't know. I don't think the Lakers can or are going to hire a first-time head coach, and that pertains obviously to JJ Redick as well, right? I think LeBron would like the idea of JJ Redick, like, for like 15 minutes or so, and then realize, oh wait, that's right, we need more experience here as our head coach, and unfortunately, you just aren't going to get that from Redick. So I don't think either are going to be the Lakers head coach, but that's complete speculation on my part. All right, I'm going to scroll up to the top of the up to the top of the comments and see if I've missed any other ones here. Lane saying, "I miss you, Anthony. I was just here yesterday." Alexis asking, with the way most playoff teams are playing with two-way players, and the Lakers currently have a mix of one-sided players on the team, who should the Lakers get in free agency or in a trade? Who specifically? I haven't really dug into that quite yet right now. Obviously you have, the prospective free agents and all of that, but you also have, as we'll learn over the course of the offseason, who is going to become more available via trade. The Lakers they aren't going to have a ton of options in free agency. So, like, they're going to have one exception, and which exception they'll have access to, I believe, will depend on D'Angelo Russell's contract decision. And obviously also LeBron's. But again, I think you could probably go ahead and pencil in LeBron at the max for the next 2 years, and maybe with a third-year player option as well. But yeah, I think Alexis is on the right track here, though, right? The Lakers have now for a couple of years, basically throughout Darvin Ham's tenure, they basically didn't employ a single high-level two-way player outside of LeBron James and Anthony Davis, and they're going to need to fix that. Right? Like, the closest thing I would maybe say is Dennis Schroeder. The closest thing, I guess, beyond that would be Malik Monk, but he was before him anyway, and he was certainly more of an offensive player. Austin Reeves might come to mind, right? But he's, like, average. Like, he competes, but he's not an impact defender, right? So I think, however, like, which names that they specifically land on, will get, as we get closer and into the offseason, we'll have a better idea of. But you need to improve as it pertains to your role players being able to, because the thing with two-way role players is they have much higher basements, right? Their ceilings, role players have, roughly I would say the same ceiling at in the NBA. You have obviously you have better role players than others, and you have guys who are stars in their role, but you generally speaking, your role players, like all you need from your role players is just not to screw everything up, right? And that's kind of my frustration with D'Angelo Russell, is that he has a crazy high ceiling, but he also is very capable of screwing everything up. And your role player needs to be kind of the inverse of that. You need somebody who's going to be steady, capable. It'd be great if that role player was capable of getting super hot and changing a game, right? That happens every so often. But what's more important to me, and this is why two-way players are so important, is you need guys who, when they are out there on the court, you're not perpetually concerned about them being complete disasters out there, complete cluster bleeps in the way that, again, I know I'm picking on D'Angelo Russell, but in the way that he can be. And that those types of players are the kinds of guys that the Lakers need to focus on this upcoming offseason. The difficult thing there is those guys tend to be your most expensive, both in terms of, counting against the cap and also in terms of how much they're going to cost you if you're trading for them. So we'll see what the Lakers are able to do as they pursue those types of players. All right, I'm going to keep on going here. Let's go. Oh, Ryan Evans. This is a good, fun question. What kind of deal do you think we can get Christie on? You think we bring him back? I think they bring him back. I don't think there's a crazy market for Max Christie. And like, this is a spot where the Lakers really need to do their homework in terms of which teams are interested in Max Christie, right? Uh, if you get enough smart teams lining up to like go out and sign Max Christie, that's when you as an organization need to say like, okay, all right, this happens with the Dodgers all the time, where teams in Major League Baseball will basically they'll hear who the Dodgers are kind of looking at. You see it sometimes with the Spurs, and you saw it back in the day with the Patriots, where teams will kind of look at like they'll catch wind. Yeah, the Patriots like this guy. What? Which guy? Who's the guy? Who's the guy that the Patriots like? Because why? What do they see? And we have come to find out, as was pointed out a ton in the roast of Tom Brady, that the reason those guys look so good, those receivers look so good, is because of Tom Brady. But the Lakers, if they have the right type of teams kind of, poking and prodding to see about Max Christie's availability, that's when they really need to hunker down and bring him back and find a role for him. Because what happened this year, honestly, of like the most fireable offenses that Darvin had, getting absolutely nothing from Max Christie has to be pretty high up there, right? Because you didn't get production from him. You didn't win enough to say that like you cared more about winning than development. And obviously, because you didn't care about development, he didn't develop. And you don't really know what you have about with the guy as you head into his free agency. And I guess the silver lining to that is that other teams don't know about him either. But a guy who knocks down like 40%, 40 plus percent of his catch and shoot threes, plays solid defense, can handle the ball for a couple dribbles here and there. Like that kind of player, that's KCP. Like, those kinds of players are really effing valuable. And the Lakers had one and just never played him. So like what kind of deal? I would say he's probably back on the Lakers next year for about 10, nah, like $8.5 million would be my ballpark. But don't don't quote me on that, because you never know with spenders in the NBA. Let's go here. If Trae doesn't have that much value, wouldn't we have a little bit of leverage? No, no, no. I said his reputation around the league isn't that great. Like with his peers and with other people around the league who don't really want to work with the guy. Um, I don't know how much that'll translate to, because here's the thing with like leverage is funny because the person with the, or the entity with the asset always has the upper hand in leverage because they can always just push away from the table, right? If I go and I buy a car, the dealership, if I need a car and I go to buy a car, the dealership has the leverage there because I need the car. Now I could go out and I could find a different car or a different offer to up my leverage, but I'm gonna pay in that kind of ballpark, and I can't go in there and completely lowball the dealership because the car has a bad reputation around the NBA. um, like it just doesn't necessarily work like that. So like, could we have a little bit of leverage here, and could we maybe, meaning the Lakers, trade for Trae Young without having to pay as much as maybe you would think going into it? Probably not, because we just saw the Hawks just last deadline essentially push away from the table once the Lakers said they weren't going to give up Austin Reeves for DeJounte Murray. And that puts you where it puts you. All right, a couple more here before my voice gives out completely. It was really nice of my son to pick up a cold heading into the off season. That is just always great. Looking here, it looks like a lot of conversation between you guys, which I'd love to see. I do love to see how much this community is kind of building. And one of my favorite things is when I go live and I see you guys saying hi to each other in the comment section. That's always really cool to me. It reminds me back of like when I was still, I think it was early college, AM 570, back when they carried the Lakers games. AM 570 used to have a posting board, a comment section there that was really active. It was a fun forum that I was pretty active on as well. Did a lot of game previews and back then it was a lot of arguing over Kobe. When is he going to win an MVP and stuff like that? And those communities though, and like when the Lakers left AM 570, that forum board disappeared, and I never quite found another community like that until like Twitter, and that took forever to become a thing. Never really felt at home at Reddit, because for pretty obvious reasons at this point. But I love seeing this community building out the way that it is, and yeah, hit that subscribe button. But let's see. Zangerstein writing, Lakers need some athletic guards, and they have none except for Max, who the coach never developed. Completely agree there. Gabe is a decent athlete. He's a pretty good lateral athlete. Unfortunately, he's so short that it doesn't really matter. So I don't really know what you do there. And I'm literally reading through the comments here. And okay, yeah, Alexis, thank you for helping me out there. The championship between the Bucks and the Nuggets was the Warriors in 2022. The Warriors, right? You had a super defender and kind of a really good rim protector in Draymond Green. You had a really good elite 3-and-D wing in Andrew Wiggins. You had Steph Curry. Now you're kind of inverted there because he is so dynamic that he kind of makes up for it. But then you have the spacing from Klay Thompson. And Jordan Poole was doing enough there before he got punched by Draymond Green. So that was, I think, I would say that's the only example of teams that like diverted from that formula. But it's not that far off. And I think that's basically like what you're going to see from here on out, the type of build from of champion from looking like the Lakers in 2019, 2020. All right. I'm right up against it here. And yeah, I'm going to go ahead and call it without I'm not kidding. I'm being 100% serious here. I'm seeing a conversation here between I think it's Allen and Zangerstein and Voltix, right? And I'm seeing you guys go back and forth on all of this. I love seeing that because but it's because community is a really important of what we're doing here. But yeah, that is all of the questions that I was able to find. That will therefore do it for this episode of the Lakers Lowdown podcast. Thank you everybody for the questions and the comments, and for the support. Please do hit that subscribe button here on YouTube. If you guys are watching from Twitter, head on over to youtube.com/@LakersLounge to find the show there. And if you guys are listening in the morning in podcast form, please do hit subscribe wherever it is that you get your podcasts, and tell friends, tell family, tell enemies, tell whoever has access to a phone. If you know that they have access to a phone, just hop on there, subscribe them to the show too. Why not? What's the worst that could happen? No, don't actually do that. You probably get yourself into some trouble. But until the next time you guys hear from me, I'm Anthony Irwin saying have a great rest of your day. Make somebody else's, and I will talk to you mañana.